I really like that's absolutely awesome, Bushy, the way you're talking about architecture, because yes, you're 100% right. You've got a block of land, you pop a house on there. What is the house going to look like? That's all beautiful and that's eye candy. But the hard work really begins when you start looking at what it's going to cost you to build that house, who's going to build it, the builder, the architect, the design, the engineering, the plumbing, and you go into the granular of what it takes in order to achieve that. So looking backwards really it's an amazing, I can see now living by design where you've tied in architecture and lifestyle, living that lifestyle. So think about what your ultimate dream is. Do you take the audience to retirement age or
Yeah, absolutely. Now I need to reinforce here, Mish, that I'm not a financial planner. I'm not an accountant. So what I'm sharing here is general information that has worked really well for myself and my partner in all things, Sonia. It's an approach that we use with everyone that we work with, but it's really about sitting down, Mish, and letting go all the boundaries and the restrictions that we place upon ourselves and saying, right, what does my perfect day, week, month, and year look like? What are my bucket list items? What are the things I really want to achieve in life? And then it's pretty easy to actually monetize that. So if you've got a pretty good picture on exactly how you want to live, how much travel you want to do a year, how often you need to wait out, what sort of clothes you want, what sort of car you want to drive, and then it gets down to breaking those numbers down, but it doesn't take long to work out how much per year that lifestyle costs. And then it's pretty easy to translate that into the nest egg number that you're going to need that's going to fund that exercise. So this sort of bridges us nicely into what I refer to as the freedom numbers, Mitch. And the freedom numbers are a part of what I call a triad strategy. So, I've read and researched and continue to read and research successful people in all walks of life.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've seen, particularly in the investment space, is that, as I've sort of touched on, and I call it a strategy, not a strategy. So it's a play on words, but I just can't help myself when it comes to words, because it's, if you start with the end in mind and then you get clear on how you want to live, you monetize that in terms of what that lifestyle costs, that folds into the nest egg number that you need to invest in that will ultimately then fund and provide the cash flow that will give you the time back to do the things that you want to enjoy. Then once we've got to those that point, we then put some shape around the freedom numbers. And the freedom numbers are, I've developed a fairly rudimentary freedom forecaster, as we call it. And again, I'm not licensed to advise on that, but it's worked really well for us and others that we've assisted. And it means breaking down 4 key numbers. So I've talked about your lifestyle income. How much per year do you need to live the way you want? That core question, how much is enough for you? Yes. Not the Joneses, the next door neighbours, or what you should be doing on Insta, but what is the right number to live the way you truly want to live? And that's getting really in touch with your values and what's important to you, and then putting some shape around that. Then we need to combine that with the break-free timeline. So how many years before you want to be in a position where your investments are going to fund that lifestyle? So that's your break-free timeline. Then the next one that folds out of that is your do-nothing number. So your do-nothing number, if you just continue to do what you're already doing, where's it going to get you to? And if that number's enough, let's say, let's take a typical example. Maybe I'll put some numbers around this, Mish, because it starts to make some sense.
Yeah,
let's say that.
Say to you, if you could throw some numbers at it, I think that would really, help us understand.
Yeah, so let me give you an example. Let's say that your lifestyle income number is $120,000 a year.
Right.
And that's enough to do everything that you need to do. And there's a big assumption here. And the assumption is at that point in time, you've eliminated all debt, you own your home freehold, so you're not paying the bank any money. 120 grand, and I've done a fair bit of research on this, is enough to give you a comfortable sort of lifestyle. So that'll allow you an overseas trip a year, a couple of interstate holidays. You can eat out a couple of days a week. You've got enough money to repair the house and drive a decent car and have your hair cut and do all of the niceties of life. About 120 grand will give you that. And let's say you want to be in that position in 20 years' time. So 20 years is your break-free timeline. And I need to emphasise my own prejudice here. in the context that, all the research I've done over many years suggests that you need to be holding property at least for 15 years and beyond to really achieve the sorts of results that you're after. And, I get a bit frustrated, Mish, but with a lot of players in the game saying that property doubles every 7 to 10 years. If you actually do the research, on average, it takes 15 years for a location to go through a complete cycle. So for me, it needs to be a minimum of 15 and hopefully 20. So let's say in this case, your break-free timeline is 20 years. That means that the nest egg number that you need to provide that 120 grand a year, based on a 5% net return on whatever it is that you invest in, means that you need to accumulate $2.4 million worth of income-producing assets. And I emphasize income-producing because your home costs you money, doesn't put money in your pocket.
Yep.
So I'm excluding the home from that asset base. And we need to remember here that 54% of Australians' wealth is in their home currently. So what I'm suggesting here is a home's not enough. You have to live somewhere. It's not giving you an income. Yes, it looks good on the balance sheet, but it's not actually feeding you. So we need to exercise that from the whole equation. And then let's say that, again, let's do some examples. Let's have a look at, if we project forward to look at your do nothing number. So if you're not going to do anything differently, let's say you've got 215 odd grand in super at this point in time, and you've got, say, 55 grand in cash floating around in an offset account or savings account, whatnot. If you project forward over that 20-year break-free timeline, based on the average growth of those assets over time, and then taking off the inflation every year from that, and I use about 2.65% as the average inflation rate, which is about where it looks long-term. It hasn't in the last couple of years, clearly.
I was going to say that's very conservative, but anyway.
But if you look before COVID, the average over the last 50 years has been about 2.65%. And it's within that, the RBA likes to keep it between 2 and 3%, and 2.65 is about where it looks. So if you project forward, let's assume that you're working and you're putting in the minimum compulsory super into that year after year, because there's an allied story here, and that is that a lot of Australians still assume, chasing the Australian dream, that paying off the home and putting money into super is going to give them a reasonable lifestyle. Well, what I'm about to demonstrate here is that's going to leave you way short of where you need to be, because if you had a 215 in super and 55 odd grand in cash and you projected it out 20 years, you're going to end up with a total nest egg of about 668,000, roughly, over that time frame. And again, assuming you're not going to spend the principal, you're going to live off the proceeds of a nest egg, because as soon as you start spending the nest egg, it becomes a negative spiral, and next thing you know, you've got nothing left. Let's say you're living off the proceeds of it, then that 668 is going to give you about 33 grand a year to live on. Now, 33 grand a year is less than the combined pension at the moment, which is about 35 grand. And I'm not going to bore you with the statistics on it and what that means, but 33 grand a year, or even the pension, full pension, is a very miserable, penny-pinching, poverty-stricken lifestyle, Mish. And there's a lot of Australians that are heading exactly, they're like the Pied Piper heading towards the cliff. They don't see it coming, but I feel sorry for those that end up in that situation. But that means that if we're still trying to get back to that nest egg number of 2.4 mil, then today, in 20 years' time, we're going to be 1.7 mil short. Now, that sounds like a big number in 20 years' time, but again, if I take off the inflation from that number to get it back to what does it mean today, that's about 880 grand, which is what I would call the number now. And in property terms, that's anywhere between 1 and 2 properties. So those freedom numbers start to put some shape around what you need to do. And the key number to remember there, the real freedom number is, in this case, is 880,000. So that's the amount you would need to secure now to ensure that you reach your lifestyle income in 20 years' time.
So, Bushy, when you're saying secure now, you're talking about purchase a property at around about 880 odd thousand, right? And that one property at 880 odd thousand is going to leverage you within 15 to 20 years to where you need to be. So, which means that if you buy 2 of those properties, you could virtually double that. And that is where compounding your assets is going to build your wealth, right? Okay. Now you're working on a factor of 5% yield. Is that a gross yield or a net yield?
That's net yield at the end of the day. So,
Okay. So that's quite conservative in residential. I mean, particularly in the current market. And I'm just going to throw a little commercial spin in here because I have to.
of course you do.
Being the commercial animal I am. So I would love to have a look at those figures and see what the difference is if we're averaging at between 6 and or 7%. I mean, ultimately right now, properties, the acquisition yield in the current market, I'm going to say is circa that 6% currently. It was 7%. It's dropped down a little bit. However, you want to get your commercial properties as close to that 7% and growing thereafter. And I think therein lies the beauty of that compounding, building wealth ultimately into your future. So
absolutely.
Great with those numbers.
Yeah, and again, the freedom forecast enables you to model all of that. You can change the return rates, you can change the timelines, you can change the income. Yeah, it enables you to actually start playing with that and doing best, worst, likely case scenarios. But it really starts with the important thing here is to create a magnet and a compass that's going to guide you as a GPS towards where you want to get to. Because again, I way too many people, and you probably see the same, Mish, you ask them, okay, why are you investing in property? Oh, I want to make money. Or that's as furry as it just, you might as well be a white elephant in the mist with that, because it gives you no clarity around what you're doing and why you're doing. And more importantly, because you and I both know, success in property is a long-term game. And that means you really need to develop patience, persistence, discipline, and determination muscles to override the inevitable speed bumps that you're going to occur along your journey. And it doesn't matter what you invest in, there are going to be issues and challenges. But if the end game is magnetic enough and you're excited about it and you're motivated about it, then you're going to climb over all of those speed bumps and walk across the broken glass that's going to enable you to get there. But also it means that you've got a compass that enables you to go, okay, every day, is this decision I'm going to make going to take me closer towards where I want to live or further away? And suddenly you've got that GPS that's giving you some guidance on where you're heading. And that's the first step. So that's what you want to do. What you then need to look at is, what can I do? And that's where I apply what I call the bare facts assessment. So the bare facts, again, if you haven't picked this up already, Mish, I'm a man of shocking acronyms. I just can't help myself.
I've noticed.
Yeah, it's just
you love articulate, you love details, and you love acronyms. And I think that is fantastic. I think it's awesome. More people like you, please.